Alright, shalom, shalom to the nation of Israel, shalom. This is your brother Kazakia out of Great Millstone, New Orleans branch, coming to you with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem El Shai, right? But prior to getting started, we want to give all infinite honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone who rule and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations be to the hopeful elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, all right? And the title of today's lesson is going to be the beginning of the end, all right? That's the title of today's lesson, is going to be the beginning of the end, all right? And I'm pretty sure, you know, different brothers, you know, has already heard that the U.S. has carried out an attack, you know, on Iran's nuclear sites, man, which is a declaration of war. You know, before you had, you know, basically like, you know, skirmishes, so to speak, or the U.S. wasn't, you know, involved in the fact that they were the exact people to actually carry out the attacks, man. But now they actually carried out the attack. You can't use another nation, you know, like Israel, you know, or some other nation, you know, to blame for this, man. Okay, so this is a major part of prophecy, man. This is a key part of prophecy. This is what, you know, our forefathers, you know, the time frame that our forefathers had long to see. Okay, you know, and it's a beautiful time. And in this we're gonna get, you know, a few precepts, you know, dealing with Jacob, you know, in his state, you know, dealing with the times. Okay, and definitely Esau, man, because he's falling from out of power. Okay, all right. So the first precept, you know, we're gonna get is this is Joel 2 and verse 1. It says, "Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain." Okay, and that's what we're doing, you know, day in, day out. Okay, we're prophesying against Babylon the Great, you know, the great city, you know, the whore. Okay, you know, we're prophesying against it, telling, hey, look, you know, to you so-called blacks, you know, so-called, you know, Native Americans, you Latinos, right? And to you, you know, you Gentiles, you Israelite foreigners scattered to the four corners of the earth that look like the heathen nations, but are actually, you know, Israelites. Okay, you know, we're prophesying to y'all, telling y'all that America's gonna be destroyed, man. Okay, you know, so either you can take heed. We're blowing the trumpet, okay, which the trumpet basically is a representation of warning, man. All right, but our people aren't hearing it, or they're not taking heed to it. Okay, and it says, "Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand." And we're seeing it. Okay, we're seeing it, man. We're seeing these different nations basically be gathered together, you know, for the big showdown, man. Okay, you know, we know basically Russia's going to get involved, right? Now that the U.S. is involved, which is also going to drag in other key players like China, you know, or like North Korea, you know, which is going to draw even more nations. Okay, but eventually everybody's going to turn their back against a Babylon the Great, aka America, man. Okay, according to prophecy, it's going to be completely destroyed, wiped off the map. It's going to be a desert land, man. Okay, so you can either get with the program, right? You know, get underneath the wing and the protection, right? Come up in the chambers with Yahweh Shem El Shai, or you're going to be laid waste with this this land, man. Okay, so I'm gonna continue on just a little bit, and I know this going to basically the nuclear missiles, okay, and the destruction of the land, you know, and describing it, okay? But I won't get too much, but a little bit more. Verse 2, and it says, a day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness. And that's what's going to happen. These ICBM missiles, right, are going to be pelting America, causing these mushroom clouds, right? Basically giant radiation clouds, okay? And what's going to happen, man? You know, it's going to block out the sun, man. Okay? Sunlight, right? Or the moonlight, okay? Just it's like it just going into basically, you know, that great day, a terrible day, man. One that is like none other, okay? And it says, as the morning spread upon the mountains, right? So that's how the missiles are going to come in, man. The missiles going to come like the morning spread, man. And when you really think about how daylight comes in, man, it's fast, man, right? When you really think about it, you know, basically goes, when the sun comes up, it goes from, you know, basically night to day extremely fast, man. You know, that light spreads fast. So that's how, in like manner, that's how the nuclear missiles are going to come, man, right? Because, you know, when they drop, right, when they hit the earth, okay, it causes what? It basically a radiation blast, a destroying wind, okay? You know, that's why they have the term, you know, a so-called nuclear fallout, man. Right? And I believe they did a simulation on one in I believe it was New York City, man. They said what would happen if you dropped a nuke here, man. And they said it would decimate everything for a 2-mile radius. Okay. And then for maybe like another 2 miles, you know, people would, you know, there'll be broken glass, buildings will be all messed up. People get, you know, 3rd-degree burns, suffer from radiation, you know, dying from that. Okay. You know, the earth got a lot looking forward to it, man. So this is the time frame that we in, man. It's the beginning of the end, man. Okay. You can't come into a movie and expect to know what it is coming in halfway, man. You got to start from the beginning of the movie, right? Which is a representation of coming into the truth, getting the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And then you got to be fast tracked. Okay, you got to get on board, so to speak. Right? You got to catch up, get up to speed, learn the prophecies, learn the breakdowns. You need to know it. Okay? Otherwise, you're not going to know what to do during the time of Jacob's trouble. But, you know, that's another thing within itself. All right, we'll finish off this one here. It says a great people and a strong. So it's likened unto what? The missiles are likened unto a great and a strong people, man. Okay? You know, which basically goes back into, you know, ancient times, how you have one army against another army and everybody's, you know, fighting. But when you see them fighting, they're all over the place. They're just everywhere. Okay? You know, this person's battling that person and so on and so forth, man. They got the shields, right? The swords are clanging together. All right? This is what's coming to Babylon the Great in the form of, you know, nuclear missiles, man. Okay? And it says, there have none been ever the like, neither shall be any more after, even to the years of many generations. Okay, I'm gonna get one more. It says, a fire devoured before them, and behind them a flame burneth. Okay, so, you know, that's what these new, like I said, you know, the ICBM missiles. That's what they're gonna do, man. When they drop, a fire before them, okay, and what's behind them, man? It says a flame burneth, okay. all right, which goes into the tail end, basically the tail end of the missile, okay? And it says the land, okay, is as the Garden of Eden, right? Which means, basically the land is as life, okay? The grass is green, the birds are chirping, okay? Squirrels are running around in the trees. The trees are healthy, right? Ripe, right? Growing fruit, right? The vegetables are growing. There's plenty of water. Basically everything's flourishing and nourishing in the way in what it's supposed to be. Life and existence is there, man. Okay? But it says, and behind them, talking about the nuclear missiles, behind them is what? A wilderness. Okay? So the nuclear missiles come down, right? As that the fire that devoured before them and that flaming breath, okay, they come down, they hit the land, and they make it desolate. Okay? That's what they're going to do. Okay? Before them is as the Garden of Eden, but after they touch down, nothing else is going to be there. Okay? It's going to be as if it's a wilderness. Okay? And it says, yeah, and nothing shall escape them, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're left here in Babylon the Great, you're meant to be destroyed, by these ICBM missiles, if you even make it to that time period. Okay? So this is what the world is God looking forward to, man. Okay, and we're going to talk about also, you're going to get another precept, really quickly. You're going to get Matthew 24 and verse 6, and it says, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Okay? And that's what we're hearing now, man. People getting ready to do what? To take on other nations for the battle, right? We see that with basically China, basically circling Taiwan, okay, to take them down. And there's so many words, we thought that might happen first before the, Ukraine and Russia. But the Lord had it to where Russia and Ukraine happened first. So what's going to happen next, man? China's going to overtake Taiwan, man. Okay? And it says, see that ye be not troubled, right? Because we have the scriptures, right? Which provides comfort, knowing the things that are going to happen, how it's going to take place, why it's going to take place. We just don't know exactly the exactness of when everything is going to take place, right? Because everything is within the Lord's time, man. Okay? He's the author of that. He can have things die down just a little bit and bring it right back up, right? So, but we know that we're super close, man. We know we're near the coming of Yahweh Bashima Shai, man. Yahweh's going to send his son back, Yahweh Shai, right? And basically redeem us from the earth, man. Okay? Give us new bodies, man. And bring about the kingdom of heaven. Bring about righteousness within the earth. We're missing it. We're longing for it. Right? And it says, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Okay, so we see those beginning wars start to happen. And, we know that it's going to happen, but the time isn't just yet. Okay, there's a few more things that has to happen, before, basically all hell break loose. We basically got to see the implementation of the MOTB. Okay, all right, we got to see that try to be established in the earth, be prevalent. Okay, and then we also have to see basically Jacob's trouble, a more hardcore version of it, right? Because Jake is basically in the preludes of it now. We're in the beginnings, of sorrows, okay? We have yet to see the climatic moments, right, which is going to lead up to salvation. Lord willing, we be at that number, okay? And it says, verse 7, it says, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So we see that all throughout the planet Earth. We see these different nations beginning to go against each other, skirmish against each other, battle against each other, okay? And then we see what? We're entering into the time of basically famine, okay? The food prices are skyrocketing, okay? We're basically about to enter into hyperinflation, via the tariffs. There's a lot going on there. And also we're going to enter into, the famine of the word, okay? Well, the Lord is going to shut the mouth of the prophets, right? Because, Esau basically has always been trying to gain basically like superiority, right, or control, really, over the internet, over censorship, okay? Because he wants to be able to dictate, exactly, what is being portrayed out there, right? So that he can basically, he can flip the narrative, okay? Right? He's in control of the narrative, what the people are talking about. He don't even want the chance of the truth or any truth seekers or truthists. He don't want any of that content out there, okay? So you're going to experience not only food, water, shortages, but you're also going to experience famine of the world. People are going to look for the prophets and they won't be around, man, because the Lord's going to basically hide his men. All right. And it says, earthquakes. We seen that if you ever download the earthquake app, okay, and it'll tell you basically all the places in the earth where the earth, has earthquakes, man. I remember I had the app, I believe, downloaded maybe about a few months ago or something like that, and I just decided to open it up one day to see how many earthquakes, and there was probably over 100 earthquakes, man, within a few days. I mean, there were, some small, but the point is, that's what's happening, man. Those things that's happening, and basically brings the scriptures to life, okay? And it says, I'm gonna read one more. It says, verse 8, Matthew 24:8, it says, all these are the beginnings of sorrows, right? So that's what we're seeing, man. We're seeing people, in pain, right? Tears, loss, trouble, woes, calamities. We're seeing it, man. We're seeing the people in tribulation, okay? But what are the prophets doing? What are the men of the Lord doing? Okay, they're prophesying against the downfall of Babylon the Great, and also the other nations too. We can't forget about them. But, we're happy, right? We're rejoicing because we know the return of Yahweh Bashim al-Shai is on a rise, man. This here, right now, is a great work, man. This is a powerful work to be doing. This is the best job you could have on the planet. Right here, right now, right? Is being a righteous prophet, man. Being a man of the Lord. I say that humbly, Lord willing, we are of that number, but we won't know until it's that time, okay? But, we can say, at least for now, Lord willing, we endure, we basically got front row seats to the movie. Okay, hence the title, of today's lesson is the beginning of the end, man. We got a lot to go through, but we also got even more to look forward to. This is a beautiful time. All right, let's get another precept. All right, let's get this one there. All right, this is 2nd Esdras 13 and verse 29. It says, "Behold, the days come when the Most High will begin to deliver them that are upon the earth." Verse 30, and it says, "And he shall come to the astonishment of them that dwell on the earth." 31, it says, "And one shall undertake to fight against another," okay, which is the time frame that we're in now. "One city against another, one place against another, one people against another, and one realm against another." Okay, so the Lord said what? You know, I believe it's pursuing back to Isaiah the 19th chapter, that you know, he will set Egyptian against Egyptian, man. Okay, you know, so the people are against each other, you know, whether it be politically, whether it be you know, spiritually, right? Whether it be people believing in different classes, right? Or people believing in different races, right? The stage is set, man, for the race wars to pop off, you know, the class wars, okay? You know, also basically you know, trying to destroy certain, you know, political agendas, okay? The overtaking of you know, the government, so to speak. The people are already writing in the minds of the people sedition. Plus, you're going to also have T attacks, okay? You got to watch out for the algorithm, you know, try not to say certain words and stuff like that. But, you know, you're going to have T attacks, man. You know, because, you know, those people's plans are basically, you know, basically attack multiple infrastructures, okay, all at one time. You know, big events, you know, crowded places, you know, but the main thing is they hit you economically, you know, where it hurts at, you know, and these nations know it, man. That's why they talk about, you know, basically a EMP attack, you know, T attacks, you know, that's going to cripple the economy, which is going to tank it more, okay? And what the people going to do, they just going to be upset, man, okay? They're going to be unsettled. They upset now. So how much more when they can't get their daily bread? How much more when they can't feed their kids? Okay? You know, think about the extent that one man, you know, will go to feed his family. It's pretty far. You know, the scriptures talk about that, man. You know, the people not sparing their neighbor, man. Running in their houses, you know, spoiling them, stealing their goods, right? For lack of bread and want. Okay? All right. Let's get another precept real quick. Let's get this here. Bear with me. All right, this is 2 Timothy 4 and verse 5. It says, but watch thou in all things, endure afflictions. And we're doing that now, man. We're watching, we're being circumspect, right? Continually watching the prophecies, man. Watching how the Lord has everything unfold. Okay, we're basically aware, right? We're spiritually aware of what's going on. All right, and it says endure afflictions. Yeah, man. you know, Jake is catching hell, man. Okay. You know, Jake is having problems, you know, with, you know, the job. Definitely 110% always got problems with the, we call it the car demon down there, man. There's always something going on with the cars. You know, brother brought a brand new car, you know, only to have all, you know, the lights just on the dash and, you know, exhaust leak. It just, it sucks, man. You know, but anyway, you know, but the point is, you know, suffer afflictions, man. That's what endure means, man. And you know, it means to basically suffer, man, because you're gonna suffer in this truth, man. The Lord suffered when he was here, okay? And you know, the scriptures say the servant ain't above his master, so you're gonna suffer too, right? That's why, you know, I believe it was Peter say, you know, thinking not strange, the fiery trial that's to come upon you, man. All right, you're gonna go through a lot, you know. The scriptures also say, enter ye in at the straight gate, you know, which goes into a position of difficulty, which just means it ain't easy, man. But the scriptures also say, you know, basically our light afflictions aren't even to be compared to the things that we're gonna receive, you know. And Lord willing, we be at that number, man. So it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful time, man. Okay, we're right here at the threshold. Okay, the beginning of the end, man. It's a time to rejoice, right? But it's also time to, you know, be circumspect. Trim your lamps, man. You know, get right with the Lord. Do the work, right? You know, brothers, you know, shouldn't be dealing with, you know, a plethora of demons or something, man. Okay. Because as we get closer to the nearing and the return of Yahweh Shema Shai, these demons gonna ramp up too. Okay? Because they also know it's time. All right? And it says, do the work of an evangelist, right? You know, going out there, you know, doing presenting your body a living sacrifice, doing the work on the highways and hedges, right? You know, teaching what you know. You basically, at this point, you kind of got to go for what you know. You know what I'm saying? You be getting a certain amount of, you know, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. You know, you got to teach what you know. Pray the Lord increase you in the spirit, that you grow. Okay. And it also says, make full proof of thy ministry, man. So, you know, it's basically, you know, backing up another way, you know, of doing the work. So yeah, we take a look at the wars, the rumors of wars, the nations basically claiming war against each other. Okay. You know, we take a look at us, man, what we should be doing as prophets. Okay. At this end time. Okay. And that's what we should be doing, making full proof of the ministry. Okay. Right. So you basically, you know, have, you know, the opportunity, you know, to, you know, be selected for salvation. Okay. All right. Let's get another precept. I'm going to close out soon. All right. This is Deuteronomy 30 and verse 15. It says, see, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil. Okay. And that's what the Lord has given us, man. You got two options here, man. Okay. You know, you don't have, you know, this is not a multiple choice test where you have 5-6 different options on how you can make it. It's either you repent, come back to Yahweh Shema Shai as your power, worship him, do the works, okay, or you die. That's it. Those are your options. You don't repent, you're going to die, right? And we know, according to prophecy, 2/3 of our people, aren't going to make it. Okay? So I'm going to read on verse 16. It says, "In that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, that thou mayest live." The key point is live, right? Because if you aren't doing those things, you're spiritually dead, which is going to lead to actual physical death, okay? Because we know that the wages of sin is what? Is death, right? And it says, that thou mayest live and multiply, and the Lord thy God shall bless thee in the land whether thou goest to possess it. Okay? And I'm going to read to verse 18. It says, "But if thine heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them," right? And that's what our people are into worshiping other gods. Okay, they're serving them. Our people are into a plethora of different idols, man. Okay, a whole bunch of them. And basically, it's going to lead them to what? It's going to lead them to death. It's going to lead them to destruction, right? Esau is already on his way out. He's the son of perdition, but they also on a road to perdition, right? Which, basically, going into a road that's going to lead to destruction, man. They trying to get into a house, right? That's basically on fire, man. And once you walk in this house, that's it. You're not coming out. Verse 18, it says, "And I denounce unto you this day that ye shall surely perish, and that ye shall not prolong your days upon the land, whether thou passest over Jordan to go over to possess it." Well, actually gonna go one more. And it says, "I call heaven and earth to record this day against you." Okay? And so in like manner, the prophets are doing the same thing, right? When you hear the word and you reject it at this past time, at this present time, okay? You basically are slapping away the hand that's going to save you from falling off the cliff. Here it is, you're on the ledge, you're hanging down, you got one arm, okay? The other arm is just hanging, and a guy comes along and say, "Hey man, grab my hand, let me help you." And you just slap away the hand, but also knowing you're gonna fall. You know what I'm saying? So it's it's symbolic for saying, man, you just want to die. Okay? The warning's going out. Okay? That's why we started off today's lesson with blowing the trumpet. Right? And it's basically going into what? The beginning, the beginning of the end. Okay? And it says, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curses. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live, man. Choose life, man. The ways of the Lord are choosing life, okay? You either get with the program, man, or you gonna lay down. Basically, there's a saying in the world, what side of history is the people gonna be on, man? Man, we chose the Lord, man. We choose Yahweh Hashem Shai. Well, which, we, looking at it, the Lord chose us, basically from the foundations of the earth, man. Okay, so our spirits, all the people's spirits are basically programmed to, programmed to basically worship the Lord, man. They hear this word and it makes sense to them, man, instantly. They say, man, this is it. This is the way to go, man. Like the scriptures say, they hear their teachers, you know what I'm saying? And they, they hear a voice that say, "This is the way, walk ye in it," Well, we're walking, man, and walking requires actions. We're at work, and now is the time to put in work, man, because there's gonna be time when we can't put in work. All right, so we need to be doing all we can do through the spirit and power Yahweh Shema Shai, you know, to make our calling and election sure. Okay. All right. Got one more. I'm gonna close out. We're willing. You know, and this one's for what? Like I said, we're at the beginning of the end, man. So when are we gonna see? When are we gonna know when it's that time, man? You know, give us a roundabout, right? And we're gonna get that from out of the book of 2nd Esdras, okay? And this is 2nd Esdras 6 and verse 7. It says, "Then answered I and said, what shall be the parting sunder of the times, or when shall be, Salakia, or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth?" Verse 8, it says, "And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Jacob," Salakia, "from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were bare of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau." Verse 9, it says, "For Esau," okay, so Esau is basically, you know, the biblical name for the so-called white man, okay? That's his name. You know, he's been running from that name, you know, which he made up the name white. You know, he wasn't called that, okay? They made that up in the 1600s. I believe it was like 1680, 1681, where they basically turned a phrase, you know, white, you know, calling themselves white, man. You know, they don't, not only that, but also, you know, begin to put colors on the other nations too as well. Okay, you black, you red, you yellow. Okay, the people wouldn't call that, man. But that's basically, you know, the time frame of when he started calling himself, you know, white, right? Because white represents pure, man. Okay, it represents righteousness, which is the polar opposite of what this guy is, man. You know, there's nothing righteous about him. There's nothing pure about him. Okay. It says, I'm gonna read it again. It says, "For Esau is the end of the world." Okay. Basically the end of an age. Okay. I believe the word there in the Greek is eon, man. You know, that's why the scriptures always talk about what? You know, that first heaven passing away, that first, the first dominion, the first rulership, right? Also the earth, man. You know, passing away too. You know, because when the Lord returns, he's going to have to refresh the earth. Okay? It doesn't mean that the whole earth is going to cease to exist and then be recreated. It just means it's going to be refreshed. It's going to be renewed. Right? Because this devil's went around, he destroyed all the land, the people, the air. They got damn, you know, trash in space, man. You know? All right, and it says, "And Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth," man. So, you know, Jacob is the beginning of basically righteousness, the kingdom of heaven, right? At the return of our Lord and Savior, Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, man. Okay? So this is a beautiful thing. All right? You know, it's a exciting time, man. It's beautiful, you know. Like I said, first and foremost, Lord willing, we be at that number, you know. Be held at the stead of, you know, righteousness, receiving crowns, okay, palms. All right. But that's pretty much all I have through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. You know, the title of today's lesson was, man, we at the beginning and the end. You know, there's a lot going on in the world. You know, keeping track of the prophecies is, a thing to do, because there's just a lot going on, man. You know, our feed is lit, you know, every day. Okay. But like I said, Lord willing, this was edifying. You know, first and foremost to the hopeful elect. You know, prior to getting out of here, we want to give all infinite honor and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahushua, by Hashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone who rule and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations be to the hopeful elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right. Kwam Yasharala, a Bible Ball, Shalom.